Hello, all you lovely crafters out there. I decided kind of impromptu to make this video about the different kinds of daubers and texturing methods that I use. And I did a little bit of this last year in one of the art play videos, but I wanted to make a video that was just about daubers and how I do that sort of thing. Because of course I do have some of these commercial ones and they're great, they're really, really neat. But one of the things that's different about the daubers I make is, well, for one thing, they're 100% recycled materials. So I do need to make new ones from time to time, but hey, these little foam bits wear out and you have to replace those. So, if we use this sort of thing for edging and stuff, our stuff's going to wear out. But it's really neat to be able to make your own. And one of those advantages, okay, it's really flat. It's very flat and it has hard edges. And what happens with those edges is that they sometimes will show up. And what's neat about making your own is that they're very rounded, they're squishy. You can, you can squish it, you get a rounder edge, and I'm going to show you. It just makes all the difference. So the materials that I have been using to make my daubers is these are used dryer sheets. So, you can use them a couple of times or even 3 times. They can go through the dryer. And then it's time to just they get pretty thin. But before they get too thin, because they do get pretty thin, they get quite transparent and they start tearing and everything. So I wouldn't use this one probably for a dauber because it's become a little bit too thin. But if it's one that hasn't been used too much, it's got a little more texture still to it. Let's see. Oh, another thing that would be really good would be a bit of really thin interfacing. Let me go grab a piece of that. So, it's funny. I do some sewing and I hadn't even thought of using interfacing, but this is the more of the featherweight. It's also fusible. The only thing I have right now in the featherweight is fusible, but it's very flexible. So I'm going to try that. I haven't tried it before. So I'm going to cut off a piece of this and use it as well. So we just kind of need a square or a round. Doesn't need to be perfect. All right. So here we go. Another material. We always wind up with some odd pieces when we're sewing interfacing for collars and cuffs and things like that. So usually there'll be some scraps. And at the moment, I didn't want to spend much time looking for that scrap bin. I want to remember that because the thing is, we don't want to have that fusible. Well, maybe we do. I don't know. There's the fusible side is what gets heated up with the iron, and it basically is a kind of glue for the other side of the fabric. But we're not going to heat this thing up, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and play with this. I have this is some of that fiberfill that comes out of vitamin bottles. This is a use for that. There's also, I have some fiberfill. We can use that. There's also, I have some bubble wrap. I love bubble wrap. And I've been doing some collage and journal making, and I've been distressing the edges and inking those things. And so I've been using these, and I've worn a couple of these out. So I have one for every color or color family. They don't absorb hardly anything, which is another thing that's really good about these materials, the foam and this. It's a resistant, this is itself probably some kind of a Pellon. So those kinds of things just don't absorb much of the ink, and that makes them ideal for this. So you're not wasting a ton of ink on getting stuck on the dauber. So anyway, without further ado, these are super, super simple. So let's make 3 of them and we'll play with that. So one of the things you can use is some fiberfill. And I just make like a little ball of it. So, just a little ball. And then I'll double up. I'll double up a piece of that dryer sheet. Just tuck it all together here. And if you know somebody that gets the newspaper regularly, they usually get a whole bunch of rubber bands. So you don't even have to buy rubber bands. And there might be other resources for rubber bands, but voila, you've got a dauber. And as I said, there's rounded edges. So we have square edges and we have rounded edges. And I'll tell you, sometimes those rounded edges are really cool, especially if you do any kind of scrubbing and you don't want to get that hard edge of that round. So I highly recommend making your own daubers. Now this one has got the fiberfill in it. We can also, let's grab another one of these. It's not all busted up. All right, so you want to just grab a little, well, that one I might have to cut. So I kind of fluff it up a little bit so it's not, again, you know, kind of keep that, get that roundedness going there. And I like to tuck in the four sides. And then I can kind of push it in. So you're getting kind of that little origami shape there. And then push it all to the middle. And you could push it and shove it and tweak it till you're satisfied with the roundness. Get a little mushroom shape here. And there's another kind with the cotton stuff, which is some other kind of polyester. So we have that and we have that. All right, both of these are really nice. They've got firmness and they ink really well, which we will demonstrate here. What else can we use? Well, golly, you know, I've been using bubble wrap for years, and you get to sit there and pop bubbles and all that sort of thing. You don't have to. It's always good to have some bubble wrap around that has bubbles intact. They have their own lovely texture, which I did show last year in one of the art play videos. So if you pop the bubbles though, what happens is you don't get those little round shapes. You get kind of it's just much more textural. So you don't have to go all the way out to the edge. The main thing is to get the ones that are in the middle, because we're going to do the same thing here. Now, a lot of times when I'm using bubble wrap, I just grab a piece, wad it up. Just do a little quickie here. I just wad it up like that so that it's just very random, you know, just kind of like that. And you can, if that's where this one hasn't been popped, so you get that spotty look. But even with that, if you want to, let's put something underneath here. When you want to do edges, as you get a little bit more of that old foxing, that's a term for books that have started to decay. Foxing is where you get, and use a very light hand, you can get that appearance of it's the lignin in the wood on old pulp books that were made with wood pulp. If you get really old books, they were made with hemp or cotton, and that paper lasts and lasts. That's why you can have, you know, 100, 200-year-old books, 300-year-old books, but they were made with cotton or hemp fiber, and it just lasts forever. Whereas the wood fiber, it isn't acid free, so it starts to get that kind of funny little foxing on it. So that's one way I would use the bubble wrap. But the other thing you can do with bubble wrap is exactly the same. You've got a little bit of fiberfill or a little bit of that fiber from vitamin bottles, and just tuck it in. Might want to make sure you got all the bubbles popped. There we go. And we're going to get something with a different texture than the other type. Now, I think I got all of these bubbles popped. I don't usually do bubble wrap this way. I like with the more random. There's some different types of bubble wrap, so you want to experiment. Let's see. All right, this one. Okay, that one is mostly popped. So usually when I've used bubble wrap, I've used it like this, where I've just wadded it up into like a little ball. And you can use it this way, of course. You can get kind of create a little bit of aging just by skimming over the top with a very light hand. Okay, so let's see what happens when we use a rubber banded piece of bubble wrap. Yeah, I don't know, like a little, as I said, I don't usually use this one this way. Well, you can get quite a strong coloring. There's a couple different ways of edging. I like to do this kind of skirting it in from the edge sometimes. Now, what's interesting is that you don't get any ink at all. The bubble wrap lets go of the ink immediately, so you don't have any waste at all. You can see this really gathers up a lot of ink, and these gather up a lot of ink. Bubble wrap doesn't gather any onto itself. It all comes off. So there's an advantage of making your own dauber with bubble wrap. There's nothing left. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So that's a good kind of dauber too. So let's see. Now, if I do that and I just want, now I still get a little bit of a dottiness. I must have one that didn't pop. That's, well, they're still kind of circular. If you pop them all and you do this little wad thing where you kind of push it in the middle, and I just kind of wad it up. This one's all been popped. Light hand, very, 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 very light tap. You can get a little bit of that texture without so much of the dots. And that's when they're popped. So this is something that you might want to try, is get a few sheets of bubble wrap. This one is a little bit different kind. There's oh my goodness, there's micro bubble wrap and there's the big 1-inch ones. Great thing to play with. And what's really neat though is you could just make these fast and easy. Oh, that's right. We didn't do the pellon. Okay, here's the pellon. Let's take a little bit of this. This is a new one for me. I hadn't done the pellon before. So I'm going to choose to put this batting on the what would be the glue side of the pellon. You can feel a nubbly kind of texture, and that's basically they're little glue dots that when you put a hot iron on them, they melt and they adhere to your fabric. All right, well, I haven't used the pellon before. Okay, it's not quite, well, it's very similar to the dryer sheet. Very, very similar. All right, let's try that one out. Let's get this one. Well, there you go. Any of you folks that sew, you got a little scraps of pellon. Oh, some quilters use fusible weft too. So how fun is that? And is this all recyclables? You're making a new use out of them. Hey, this is pretty nice because I'm getting some nice shading here. I'll just try it here. Let me flip this one over. Maybe you'll see it better with the contrast. All right. So it's getting some on there. Well, there you go. How about that? So we have recycled materials that make wonderful daubers. And yes, these are great to have a little bit of that there too. This one with bubble wrap. And then of course, bubble wrap plain, wadded up. Makes wonderful texture. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that idea. Do try it out. I love using these recycled materials because again, they give you a different texture, and I like the rounded edge of my homemade ones. I like these too, but I really like having that rounded edge because I wind up not accidentally getting kind of a hard edge sort of thing. These work fantastic. But when I start doing that scooching it in stuff, I got to be it's you're more you're more likely to get kind of a circular appearance with these you don't get quite so much of that. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. Here you go. I hope that was fun. Please try it for yourself and happy crafting. This is Kim Victoria. See you in my next video.